Palestine, the number of civilians killed by Israeli attacks on the Gaza Strip rose to 23,800, the Ministry of Health of the enclave reported. In Ecuador, the government has announced the release of all the prison police officers kidnapped since last Monday in several prisons across the country. In Guatemala City, Indigenous and peasant organizations have mobilized in defense of democracy prior to the inauguration of President-elect Bernardo Arévalo. Hello and welcome to From the South. I'm Alejandra Garcia from teleSUR Studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. The number of Palestinians killed by Israeli attacks on the Gaza Strip since the current escalation rose to 23,800, the Ministry of Health of the Palestinian enclave reported. The number of people killed by Israeli operations in the Gaza Strip since October 7th rose to 23,843, while the number of people wounded increased to 60,317, according to a ministry representative in statements to local press. In the last 24 hours, 135 people were killed by Israel's 12 attacks on civilian infrastructure. These figures mean that 1 in 20 Palestinians are already dead, wounded or missing from Israeli attacks. Russia and other countries are urging Israel and Hamas to agree to a ceasefire and advocate a two-state solution, approved by the United Nations in 1947 as the only possible way to achieve lasting peace in the region. In the Gaza Strip, it's been 100 days since the start of the Israeli genocide, and the United Nations organizations is demanded an end to the aggression against the Palestinian people. In a statement, the United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Palestine refugees in the Middle East deplored the massive destruction, displacement, and killing of Palestinian civilians, mostly children, as a result of the persistent Israeli aggression in the Gaza Strip. The agency urged for the need for a ceasefire and to ensure that humanitarian aid reaches all those affected. The United Nations agency also condemned Israel for the physical and psychological scars inflicted on the Gaza population, which they say will take years to heal. Egypt made a statement on the situation condemning Israel's measures, including the strict inspection processes that prevent the entry of large amounts of products into the territory. Also reminded that his country continues to work tirelessly to enable the entry of a substantial amount of aid to Gaza. The statement of Egyptian authorities are the second official response to Israeli claims before the International Court of Justice, claiming that Egypt is limiting international aid to the Strip, something that Cairo has previously described as false allegations. On Saturday, thousands of people gathered in the Indonesian capital to attend a demonstration in solidarity with Palestine. The rally took place in front of the U.S. Embassy in downtown Jakarta and gathered around 5,000 people. The demonstrators, dressed in black and white, holding posters saying "Boycott Israel" and "Ceasefire now," demanding that Israel stops its ongoing war crimes. Indonesia, the world's most populous Muslim majority nation, has long been a strong supporter of Palestinians and does not have formal diplomatic relations with Israel. Also in South Korea, people have taken to the streets in support of the Palestinian cause. Under the slogan "Ceasefire and Free Palestine," people have expressed their condemnation of the continuous bombing and ground attacks by the Israeli occupation forces against the civilian population in the Gaza Strip. Thus, South Koreans have joined the voices to the world advocating for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza. In the United Kingdom, people demonstrated in London in support of the Palestinians in the Gaza Strip. On the 99th day since the beginning of the Israeli aggression against Gaza, demonstrators gathered in the center of London in rejection to the violent acts perpetrated by Israel. The protest was led by social movements and citizens who called for a humanitarian ceasefire in Gaza, while rejecting the US and the UK attacks on Yemen. The demonstration took place under heavy security measures with the involvement of some 1,700 policemen to maintain order and direct the London march.
Our government needs to recognise that what is happening in Gaza is a genocide and to call for an immediate and permanent ceasefire.
We're here to show our leaders and our politicians that we are in a democracy and they don't speak for us. When they decide not to back a ceasefire, when they decide to continue to export arms to Israel, when they decide to drop airstrikes on Yemen, those are not decisions that speak for us, and I'm here to voice that frustration.
And I think in years to come, it's going to be one that a lot of people are kicking themselves and saying we should have been on the right side of history back then. So I quite frankly want to be on the right side of history now.
Let's take a short break, but remember you can join us on TikTok at teleSUR English, where you will find news in different formats, news updates and more. Other stories coming up, stay with us. Welcome back. In Guatemala, indigenous people from the different points of the country arrived at the public prosecutor's office today to support the presidential inauguration of Bernardo Arévalo and Karin Herrera. The traditional authorities invited the population to appreciate the 105 days of uninterrupted peaceful resistance against the coup d'etat and scheduled the beginning of the activities at 5 local time with a Mayan ceremony. The demonstrators were joined by residents of San Sebastián department of Tenango, San Miguel, Las Pilas, San Andrés, Cajola, Quetzaltenango, Champerico, Retalhuelu, and the Indigenous Land Council of Panzos, Verapaz, among others. Antonio Garcia, a native leader from Olopa municipality, Chiquimula, reported to the press that he came to continue defending democracy and the people at this point, adding that they are seeking to avoid breaking the peace process and the rule of law, to defend the Constitution and not to violate the popular will expressed in the polls. Arévalo and Herrera prepared this Sunday a series of cultural events on the 6th Avenue of the historic center of the capital and called on citizens to concentrate in different points of the Zone 1 of the city and join the proposal from 2 p.m. onwards. Simon Palax, indigenous mayor of Solola, warned at the beginning of this month that if the elected presidential candidate is not appointed, they will carry out mobilizations and assured that the people of Solola is ready to go out to the streets again on January 15th to demonstrate their rights. On Saturday, heads of the government, high-ranking officials, foreign ministers and diplomats from more than 60 countries will arrived in Guatemala for the inauguration of President-elect Bernardo Arévalo. The President of Paraguay, Santiago Peña, arrived the day before as scheduled by the National Air Force runway and was received by the local Foreign Minister Mario Bucaro. According to the agenda, this Saturday was expected the arrival of the King of Spain, Felipe VI, and the President of Honduras, Xiomara Castro, of Colombia, Gustavo Petro, and of Chile, Gabriel Boric, among other political leaders. Ecuador controlled and killed this Saturday a number of prison riots that broke out simultaneously amid this week's wave of criminal violence. The government also released more than 150 hostages who had been held hostage by the inmates. Through a message on the social network X, Ecuador's President Daniel Noboa confirmed the release of all the hostages who had been held in prison of the cities of Esmeralda, Latoacunga, Ambato, Cuenca, Azogues, Loja, and Machala since the beginning of the week. The riots had become the focus of the ongoing violence that broke out on Tuesday with a series of attacks in different parts of the country. According to the authorities, the riots of the last 5 days claimed the lives of at least 4 people, among them a guard and 3 prisoners. Peru's Court of Appeals has revoked a ban for international traveling imposed on Popular Force Party President Ms. Keiko Fujimori. The judiciary decided to revoke the 36-month travel ban imposed on Fujimori for her alleged involvement in the cocktails case. The ruling states that the measure is unnecessary given that the present rules of conduct are kind of a parole. The prosecutor's office is asking for 30 years in prison for Keiko, daughter of former President Alberto Fujimori. She's been accused of appropriating millions received as electoral contributions by businesses and of obstructing justice. In dozens of cities across Brazil and around the world, bicycling enthusiasts and street artists and feminist activists came to the streets on Friday to honor the Venezuelan artist Julieta Hernandez, who was murdered in Brazil while on a cycling journey to her mother's home on Christmas. Our reporter Brian Meyer has more.
On Friday night, bicyclists, street artists, and feminist activists came out in 52 Brazilian cities and 9 other countries around the world to remember Julieta Hernandez, a Venezuelan clown and street artist who traveled from town to town by bicycle performing shows for children, who was brutally murdered in Amazonas while cycling towards Venezuela to visit her family for Christmas.
Julieta era uma artista de rua, bonequeira.
Julieta was a street artist. She made dolls, a clown. She made a singer and dancer. She made this doll for me. It's my clown character, made by her hands. What happened was heartbreaking, but we will continue to get stronger working collectively.
Hernandez went missing on December 23rd and her body was found by police on January 5th. 2 suspects have been arrested, a couple that invited her to sleep in their house after she couldn't find a hotel room in the town of Presidente Figueiredo, Amazonas. On January 10th, they found her bicycle and musical instruments.
We believe that oppression against women happens around the world as a product of capitalism, and what happened to Julieta wasn't an isolated incident. We are here to fight against feminicide and against this society that oppresses and exploits women. That's why we are on the streets today. Julieta, presente.
Organizers of the demonstration in Recife wrote, "May her life inspire everyone to fight for the right of the entire population to travel freely wherever it wants to, especially women." Brian Meyer, teleSUR, Recife.
In Colombia, at least 40 people died and over 30 were injured after a landslide in the northwestern state of Choco. The disaster occurred on Friday afternoon near the town of Carmen de Atrato, resulting in the closing of the road that covers the route from the city of Medellin to Quibdó. In the images shared on social networks and television channels, the destroyed cars can be clearly seen in the middle of heavy mud. According to the authorities, several landslides have made it difficult for rescuers and firefighters, which has led rescue forces to request the assistance of helicopters to relieve the work. Concerning the tragedy in the department of Choco, Colombia, its governor made statements regarding the recovery of bodies and assistance to the wounded at the scene.
We have already set up the unified command post in the department and have started the coordination and dialogue with the National House of Risk Management. All the national and regional authorities are already coordinating and carrying out actions to achieve the recovery of bodies and immediate attention to the injured in Antioquia and Choco departments' health systems. Our priority is to ensure that our actions save as many lives as possible and to bring the injured together with their families.
The World Meteorological Organization, WMO, says 2023 has been the hottest year on record, but that 2024 could bring even higher temperatures. On Friday, the WMO and the United States National Aeronautics and Space Administration, NASA, agreed with the Copernicus Climate Change Service on an increase in the global average temperature close to the limit of 1.5 degrees Celsius. This organization said El Niño weather pattern usually has a greater impact on temperatures. However, they predict 2024 to be even warmer. WMO emphasized that climate change is the greatest challenge facing humanity for the changes it can bring about. In Japan, the death toll from last January 1st earthquake has risen to 220. Japanese broadcaster NHK reported Saturday that the death toll following the powerful earthquake and a series of aftershocks that hit Japan's Ishikawa prefecture on New Year's Day now stands at 220. Another 1,014 people have been reported injured. Also, the number of houses that have been partially or completely destroyed as a result of the Noto Peninsula quake was also updated to 11,286. Moreover, there are over 32,000 households without electricity and over 56,000 without water. This has been the most powerful quake to hit the Noto Peninsula since records began in 1885. In China's Taiwan region, the ruling party candidate Lai Ching-te won Saturday's election with more than 40% of the votes. Lai Ching-te, candidate of the Progressive Democratic Party, has won the elections held this Saturday to become the next leader of the island, obtaining more than 40% of the votes. Shortly after knowing the results, Lai assured that his priority as leader of the island is to maintain peace and stability on both sides of the Taiwan Strait and to keep the status quo in accordance with the constitutional system of China's republic. According to these statements, future government appointments will include officials from other parties with the promise of giving priority to issues that have the consensus of the island's political forces. China's army has issued a warning against any attempt to promote Taiwan's independence. Chinese officials say they will not remain on high alert. They will remain now on high alert at times and will take necessary measures to defend China's sovereignty and territorial integrity. Beijing also accused the United States of stirring military security problems between the two countries and urged the United States to cease its provocations by sending military ships and aircraft near Taiwan. China's Defense Ministry spokesman Chang urged the United States to create favorable conditions for a healthy and stable development of military relations between the two countries. We have a second short break coming up, but before we invite you to join our WhatsApp community for our English-speaking audience. You can scan the QR code on screen to join directly and share the link to reach more people. Constant news coverage of Latin America and the Caribbean, as well as the rest of the world. Stay connected and informed with teleSUR. Final short break. Don't go away. Welcome back to From the South. United States and United Kingdom launched airstrikes for second consecutive night against Yemen. Yemeni authorities reported that the attack targeted the Al-Dalaimi military base near the airport of the city of Sana'a. Defense agencies specified that Washington used over 100 guided munitions to attack more than 60 targets in 16 different locations throughout the country. Officials also indicated that the cities affected by U.S. bombings are Sana'a, Al-Hudaydah, Damar, and Sada. The government of Venezuela has issued a special communique condemning the attacks by the United States and its Western allies against Yemen. The statement reads, "The Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela categorically condemns the bombing of Yemen carried out by the U.S., the United Kingdom and other countries, an illegal action in violation of international law that only contributes to further destabilization in the region. Furthermore, Venezuela insists that the only way to guarantee peace and stability in the Middle East is through the cessation of the genocide in the Gaza Strip, carried out by Israel, as well as compliance with all United Nations resolutions for the establishment of a free and sovereign Palestinian state. And finally, the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela urges the international community to exert pressure measures for the restoration of international law and justice in the area, avoiding an escalation of the conflict caused by the Israeli barbaric policy in Palestine. Cuba's Foreign Minister Bruno Rodriguez condemned the attacks by the United States and its allies against Yemeni territory. Through his account on social network X, the official expressed, Cuba condemns military attacks by the United States and NATO allies in Yemen in violation of international law. Acts of this nature encourage genocide in Gaza. In the sense, Cuba reiterated their call for an immediate ceasefire in the Palestinian enclave. At a meeting of the United Nations Security Council on Friday, Russia's ambassador before United Nations said the attacks by the United States and its allies on Yemen do not fall on the category of self-defense and can only contribute to the expansion of the conflict in the region.
Mr. Chairman, despite the claim of our Western colleagues, these massive attacks by the United States and Great Britain on the territory of Yemen have nothing in common with the exercise of the right to self-defense under Article 51 of the UN Charter. Article 51 does not apply to commercial shipping. The right to self-defense cannot be exercised to ensure freedom of maritime transport. Our American colleagues are well aware of this fact.
Meanwhile, China's representative to United Nations called on the United States and the United Kingdom not to engage any reckless military maneuvers that could lead to further escalation of the conflict in the Red Sea and the Middle East.
The Middle East region is already on the brink of extreme danger. The last thing we need at this point is reckless military adventures. The first thing we need is calm and restraint to avoid further expansion of the conflict. We urge the parties, especially the major countries with the greatest influence, to abide by the UN Charter and international law, to maintain a steer towards dialogue and consultation, and to make concrete efforts to maintain peace and stability in the Red Sea and the Middle East.
In the United States, citizens marched in the street to demonstrate their support for Yemen and Palestine. The protesters gathered outside the building that houses the permanent mission of Yemen to the United Nations in New York. The crowd spoke out against the actions of President Joe Biden and his administration in relation to the Israeli aggression in Gaza and the recent attacks on Houthi ground positions in Yemen. Citizens accused the president of genocide while demanding to stop U.S. aid to Israel. In this context, in Tehran, capital of Iran, citizens support the Houthis with mobilizations after the attacks of the United States and the United Kingdom. The demonstrators expressed slogans and prayers in support of Yemen. "O Yemen, the hero, we support you," and "Death to the United States," as expressed by the demonstrators. The demonstrators also said that the Arab countries should continue their struggle against the oppressors and follow Yemen. We have come to the end of this news brief, but you can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net and join us on social media, Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok as well. For Telesur English, I'm Alejandra Garcia. Thank you for watching.